Christian parenting.
This is Chrys and Shellie, and you're listening to Rocking It Grand.
Join us each week as we talk about leading the next generation with faith, purpose, and vision.
It's season 2. Can you imagine?
I cannot believe it. You know, this is the thing about getting older.
Yeah.
You really realize that time does not stop, even for a pandemic. We still
Nothing
move
stops.
on. Everything is still moving along. And this is season 2 for us.
And
on
all
our
the
Rocking It Grand.
Right. And all the cliches are like in my head right now. You know, time moves on, you know, nothing stays the same. I mean, all of that, like where did time go? All of those cliches are in my head because I can't believe we're about to tape season 2, but we are, and we're so excited that y'all are out there with us.
Absolutely. We always think, I think we've been doing this, we've been doing this a year, and we talk all the time, and we're always thinking, okay, well, what are we going to say? What's new out there? Well, there really is nothing new out there, but the same topics still need to continue to be discussed. Today, I think, is such a good one because Shellie came up with this idea about talking about resolving conflict and, tension. Certainly, we're in a time where there's a bit of tension out there. A bit
of tension out there. And
Yes.
Don't we all need to take like a big step back? We need some adults in the room that are saying, lower the tension. There are ways to do it. There are principles that you can apply. And we're going to talk today about applying these principles of lowering the tension and resolving conflict in our families.
Right.
But they apply to the larger discussion, right?
Absolutely. And, I even think back to my childhood. And of course, I'm a grandmother and a great-grandmother, so I see children walking through life. I run a summer camp. I see lots of children. And teaching a child how to handle tension and conflict is a gift to your children.
Absolutely.
If you can teach them how to handle that, they will walk through life. When we use the word successfully, we don't mean successfully like they're going to make a lot of money or they're going to be the king of the NBA or any of that kind of thing. We're talking about being able to walk through life with a spirit of thankfulness and gratitude and respect for other people. And so I think this topic is so important today because we are seeing some modeling being done by adults that are not good role models on how to handle conflict and tension. And so we have got to pour that into our kids while they are in our home, while we have them under our care. So if you're the mom and dad out there and listening to this, there's some important information. If you're the grandparent, who we're still, as we talk about as grandparents, we're still stepping in there and stepping up so that our kids know that we're a part of their life and we're leading them and guiding them in the right way. So some important information today. We're glad you're with us. And so, Shellie, start us off with your thoughts.
The first thing that came to me, Chrys, is I really kind of turned my mind to what could we say about resolving conflict and teaching our littles to resolve conflict so that they would grow up and they would become the adults in the room that lower the national temperature. And so that's really where our focus is today. And so the first thing that came to me is something that I established when my kids they were very young. And I jokingly refer to it as the butt defense. And what I mean by that is they were not allowed to employ the but defense in an argument. They could not say to me to explain their actions, but she did this or but he did that, because then they were not accepting their responsibility for what they had just done. So when there was a conflict, they had to come without that. And it was a hard lesson to learn because you always want to start there. Everyone wants to start the argument of but to explain their situation. So when my kids would come to me and they would say, well, I did pinch him, but he pinched me first.
Right.
Well, I would have to call them right there on that moment and say, I am not asking you what they did. I am asking you to explain what you did. And it's just such a paradigm shift in their brain for them to realize that they have that type of power.
I love that, and I'm so glad you clarified the word but, because when my kids were growing up, I didn't let them say that word, referring to the other part of their body part. And plus, I know that you were a former basketball coach, and so using that part of your body to defend the ball was part of it. So I was like, how is she going to work this butt defense into this lesson?
And you
But
probably saw that I actually spelled it
you
with the
did.
word that we didn't
You
use when our children were growing up, but it was
Right.
because that defense comes back to bite you in that area of your
Yes.
body when you use it. It always
Right.
comes back on you.
And what it does, if you allow them to continue that kind of verbiage when something has happened, when there's some conflicts, and you allow them to do that, that lasts the rest of their life. That's where, when I was saying they don't learn to accept responsibility for their actions, because they're always looking to put their actions on somebody else, and being able to say, but he did that, but she did that, but they said that, but that kid. And even if it did happen, you have to help your children say, I know that probably did happen, but what did
What-
you do?
Yeah, and what could you have done
And,
differently?
yeah.
Because that's where the conversation starts. Because
Absolutely.
it's not only with their siblings. You know,
Right.
they would come home with, my teacher did this, and she was so mean. She did this to me, and I was the only one that was not allowed to go to break, and everyone else got to go to recess. And so and they were in explaining their, the trouble that they were in that day, and I would stop them there and say, it may be a given that you were treated differently, but what could you have done in that situation that was different than the actions that you chose? And that
That's
is
right.
what we're always trying to encourage our kids to do.
That's
And
right.
it's what we need so desperately to do in our nation, because we can't fix the whole culture. Chrys, we realize that, but we can take a step back in our own circles. And I think this is a really good place to start, is by calling ourselves to that accountability of not saying, well, they did it, but
right.
the other side did it.
Well, I read somewhere, and I can't remember where this hint came from, and we may have said it in our first season, but if you missed your first season,
Go
then
back and listen.
Yeah, go listen. But somebody that I was reading one day said that they taught their children and they taught themselves to change that word but to and. So then you're saying, okay, that happened and you did this. So both of those things can be true. So it's validating
That is
the
good.
statement that they said,
That is good.
but she hit me first. You mean, and she hit you first.
Yes.
And so you're identifying and saying, okay, yes, you're correct in that. But the and tells me that something else happened as well. And what
Yes.
was that? Can you
And-
share
yeah.
with me what that thing was?
And that's good, because you're getting them to go
Right.
back and realize what their responsibility was in
Right.
that. And then you're asking them, what could you have done? You could have come to me instead of hitting them back or pinching them back or doing this. You could have come to me and said, this is the problem. This is what's going on, and let me address it without taking matters in your own hands.
Absolutely. And I think one thing we all need to step back and realize too is, if you have more than one child, you are aware that different personalities handle this situation differently. Of my three, I had one, and if I use the pronoun he, you'll know, because I only have one son, who, when he was little, we struggled with this. We really worked on this. I was constantly having to say, what did you have to do in this scenario?
Yeah.
He had a tough time accepting his responsibility. And so it was a learning every day, a learning thing that I saw that I had to work harder at. And of course, as an adult, he's an amazing adult, raising three amazing kids, and has done great. But it wasn't an easy thing for him. Some personalities have a harder time with that. And that's just accepting that God's just given us with a certain personality. And if you've got two kids,
you
those
got to work
two
with those
are not alike.
personalities. Absolutely.
And you get a third one, they are not alike. If you have 6 kids, you've got 6 personalities that you're dealing with. And so you may have to handle your children. You will have to handle your children differently. That's just a given. And don't go into this parenting thinking, I'm just going to be fair. I'm going to treat everybody the same. It will not work like that.
You've
You
got
can't.
different personalities to address. So I want to talk a few minutes about how this skill that we want to teach our children, how we need to be using it in our nation today, because we want our children to not use the but defense. We want to take that away from them so that when they come to us, that they don't start every argument with an explanation of their actions based on what someone else did, so that they take responsibility. Well, the way we want to apply this to our national discourse, because as we sit here today, Chrys and I won't take the time to bring everybody up to date on what's going on in our nation. You know the conflict, the escalating tension that's out there. Chrys, how many times do you see an interview where the response starts with the but defense, whether it is a Republican or a Democrat? We're going to speak political for just a few minutes here without drawing any sides, but whichever side of the aisle that someone is on, how often do you hear an adult say, yeah, I did this, or this is how I voted, but they responded this way, in the last session, but they did that. I believe this is a place where if we could all realize that that is not helping us move the discussion forward when we use the but defense, I think we could lower the tension.
Right. If all of us had actually learned that, let's take that word but out and it become and every time, it would just change how we view every situation, You just think about that. Like even when I'm having an argument with Johnny, with my husband, which we do, and he will say something and I might say, but you shouldn't have done that. Well, if I would have just said, and you shouldn't have, and it kind of softens the whole thing, because immediately I'm already affirming that what he said is true. And then I'm saying, and what I'm about to say is true too.
Yeah.
So can we both
and
agree?
Now the conversation can move forward.
Yes, and then you can move forward. But when you just keep throwing out that but,
then you're a stalemate. You're right there.
It's like, I'm thinking in my brain, it's like you've got the word but written on a stone, and you just keep putting it down, and you put another one and another one.
A stumbling stone, as the word would apply.
Until you can't get past the stone. But the word and allows you to be able to move.
Continue the conversation. And the reason why I say it is so important that we all recognize that this is an answer for us is because it's a place to start. If we would do it, this is what it would look like. We would no longer defend something that's undefensible. We would just move past that. Instead of giving cover to an action with, say, someone that's of our persuasion politically or whatever, instead of giving cover to it, we don't begin there. We just call it what it was. That was wrong. I spoke, didn't really realize I was going to go here, but I think I am, Chrys. I wrote some words after we saw what happened in Washington on January the 6th. And the words that I wrote, I did intentionally on social media without giving any kind of cover to the wrong that was perpetrated on our government. I said that I didn't like it when people didn't call out riots on the other side. I don't like this. Two wrongs do not make a right. And this is what we were taught when we were growing up. It's what we want to teach our kids. Two wrongs don't make a right. And so what I said was, it was wrong. Not, but there had been so much said that, got people ramped up, but this and that. No, there's no place for that in the national discourse when we're talking about de-escalating the violence. We need to be able to say, that was wrong.
Exactly. And I love that you brought up two wrongs don't make a right. I don't know if children hear that today. We heard it nearly every day growing up because there were 6 kids in my family. My mom always had cause to say that to us. But that is really what is happening right now on the national discourse is you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this.
Right.
And the but's in there instead of and. Yeah, you did this and. Then we did that.
Right.
You did that, and then we did that. And neither one of them are right.
Absolutely.
That's it.
I told Phil last night if I were going to start a foundation or a movement, and when I start a conversation like that, my husband is always like, how John looks at you like, oh my gosh, what is she doing now? And I was like, be at peace, Phil. I'm not going to start a new movement. But what I was thinking is that I would love to say to the nation, hello, meet me in the middle. Because those I have Democratic friends who would tell you the things that they're unhappy about in the far extreme of their party, and I have Republican friends who would tell you they're so unhappy about this extreme element of their party. And I told Phil I would like to say, meet me in the middle and start a movement of people that can have a conversation without that. And Phil's just hoping I wouldn't, I'm sure.
But that's right. That is exactly what the conversation needs to be about, and is what we hear them say it's going to be about, but we haven't seen those actions yet. And that's the same way with our children. We can hear them say it, but we want to see the actions that follow up the things that they're saying, and the actions when you say, meet me in the middle. And that's like when we were little, when my mom, and then when my children, and with my grandchildren, when we were put in a room and said, y'all figure it out.
Yeah.
You're not coming out of that room till you come out happy.
Oh my gosh, do I remember the days? My mother used to set my sisters and I underneath the dining room table, Chrys, with an arm. We had to get under the table. Why under the table? I do not know. I guess because it was a confined quarter. Maybe that's what she was thinking. And we would have to put our arm around the offender, the enemy, the one we did not like, and the one we were in conflict with. We would have to put our arm around that sibling and sit there until we could resolve it. Well, you cannot be in that position until you inevitably soften and giggle because you're underneath the dining room table of all places with your arms around each other.
Right.
And
so, in those scenarios, your mom really knows in her head because your kids, in 15 minutes, you're going to be out playing and running and doing something else. The problem is, as we get older, we're less likely to ever sit by somebody that we don't like.
Absolutely.
As you watch that play out. And kids, if I was a school teacher and you worked with children so much, you see that the older kids get, less likely are they. When they're little, they can fight and carry on, and then they'll be okay.
But you're so spot on. Less likely as they grow.
The older they get, they're not going to go back under the table and put an arm around each other. They're just not going to. And so that's where we are.
That's where you come with, that's where you get the extremes. That's where you get the people that just get further and further away from the middle. And that made me want to sing that song, Meet Me in the Middle, as I was saying that a while ago. But
Go for it.
I probably shouldn't do that, but I do have a scripture verse for us today that I think is applicable to what we're talking about. And it's Proverbs 26:17. I love how the word speaks to wherever we are in every situation. This verse reads, like one who grabs a stray dog by the ears is he who rushes into a quarrel, not his own. If I have ever heard a piece of wisdom that needs to go viral, that would be it. Because every time that we on social media, which is where, so much of this discourse happens, when something happens and we immediately jump to speak, and we write about it, we post about it, we share a meme about it, and it's a quarrel that's just like an angry stray dog. Well, in real life, you and I would not go out there and see a stray dog and just run over there and grab that dog by the ears because we know what's going to happen next. If we would apply that, if we could see that when we take to our platforms and we realize that we are about to speak to a subject that is just like a stray, angry dog, we would use more restraint, would we not?
Definitely, we would. And I think that as we wrap this up, I was thinking back about my family of origin, my mom and dad, and one of the things that my mom used to just say over and over again is, and this was one of those sayings, if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't
say anything at all.
Anything at all. You learn to keep your mouth completely closed unless you've got some good words that are about to pour out of that mouth. And again, with 6 kids, we were all like, oh, okay, trying to hold that in. But when you think about that as an adult, now with my adult children and all the greats and grands and all that we have around, that is how a large family can function peacefully is if you make that choice to just keep some of those words in your head. Those words don't always have to go out there. They can just roll around in your head. You think them over, whatever, but then you just like tuck them away.
You don't have to say everything you think,
That's right.
and you do not have to post everything that you think. Your opinions can be withheld. I like that because you just said that in a large family, this is how you can live peaceably.
Right.
That's where I'd love to leave this discussion today, because we're saying in the larger family that is America, let's be a part of the solution instead of adding to the problem.
Exactly.
By learning to quit using the but defense and start the conversation moving forward instead of always bringing up the past.
And teaching that to our children. That's the important thing. That's the next generation. That's the
Yes.
ones who are going to be walking through all this in 20, 30 years. So if we can do our part to help them see how to resolve conflict, how to live together peacefully, then we're doing more than we could ask or imagine,
Yes.
just raising up one family of great kids.
You know what I'm going to do to close? I'm going to say, Chrys, if you hear me use the but defense, stop me.
Oh, good.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna give you that accountability. I just feel like really strongly right now. If I'm talking about anything in our nation or anything that's going on, and I give cover to a bad action by saying "but," would you just call me out and remind me?
I love that. Do the same for me. You guys, let's challenge each other to remind each other that let's
good.
switch out that butt defense and go on from there.
Absolutely.
Well, that's our show for the day. We hope there's something in here to help you as you go out there and rock the world of the kids and grandkids in your life. Join us again next week. We'll be back with some more something. We don't know what yet, but we'll be back with something.
We'll be
for
here,
you.
and we
We'll be
hope
here.
you will be.
Yes, that's it. See you later. Bye-bye.